live on YouTube now as well. I'm just going to make sure all the technology is set up and functioning properly here. And welcome everybody to Your Soul's Story with Cheryl Prince. So for those who are joining now, please go ahead and put your name and location into the chat and into the comments. We would love to see who's on and where you're joining from. And also let us know how you're feeling today. We are in such powerful times, such interesting times. So we would love to know how you're doing, how you're feeling as you're joining us today. And I know all of us in this space are here to hold space for all of it, for wherever you might be on your journey today. So welcome to Jessica. Welcome to Gail in Ontario. Welcome to Rose in Pennsylvania. Estefania in Spain. Anna Catherine in New York. Welcome Nicola in the UK. Emmeline Astarte in Portland, Oregon. Feeling open to divine visions and expansion. How beautiful. Laura in California. Isla Rose in Kentucky. Janice in Michigan. Welcome, welcome. Suzanne in the Netherlands. Al in Malaysia says ecstatic. Yay, that's beautiful. Welcome, Al. Welcome, Zoe in the UK. Sonia from very windy Ireland. Welcome, Sun Owl in Wilmington, North Carolina. Mark in Croydon, UK. Kat in the Netherlands. And so many more. Welcome, everybody. We are just delighted to have you with us today. And we have a very beautiful, powerful presentation for you today called Your Soul's Story with Cheryl Prince. So let me just introduce who I am here on the video with. So this is a production of the Global School for Quantum Evolution. And so this is our next presentation from the Quantum Evolution School. And we're just delighted to have you joining us. And so I have here with me Kathleen Bauer. Hi, Kathleen. Welcome. And Kathleen is a multi-galactic course manager for the school. And Kathleen is just wonderful and amazing and brings so much magic into the process here. So thank you, Kathleen, for being here with us today. And also, I have here with us Cheryl Prince. Hi, Cheryl. Welcome.
Lovely to be here.
So wonderful to be here with you today, Cheryl. And I'm so excited about what you're going to share today. And so let me introduce Cheryl to everybody in case there may be some that do not know her yet who are in attendance. So Cheryl Prince is a spiritual actress, a writer, a healer, and the creatrix of 5D theater. She is a spiritual energy healer, a psychic soul guide, and multidimensional medium who offers soul story sessions that are completely guided by what your soul needs to step into 5D living. Weaving together her work as a performer, writer, and theater maker, Cheryl also gives a voice to empower those who currently feel underrepresented in the arts. 5D theater was created by Cheryl to inspire a revolution to place soul back at the center of storytelling. So Cheryl, we are just honored and delighted to have you with us today and can't wait to hear what you will share about your soul's story. So I'll turn it over to you now. Go right ahead and we will be tuning in and fully present with you here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here and also to feel the energy of this space. It feels really empowering and rippling. So yeah, good to feel that. So soul's story is so important to me. And the reason I love speaking everything about soul and storytelling is because I probably had the biggest shift in soul growth in my lifetime. And I wanted to sort of share that first so that everyone could get to know a little bit about my soul's journey and why I've put it into a bit of a hero's journey, which I will get to a little bit later. And then I will take you through a guided meditation to discover a little bit of wisdom from your soul as well, which will be delicious and activating and maybe a little bit inspiring for you. But basically, I started out on my soul's journey completely lost to my soul. I was living a very mundane existence. I was working the London hustle. I was working as a casting director. I thought it was my dream job. I was very hedonistic, partying, and life felt very flat and empty. And I didn't really know why, because I had no concept of soul back then. I had no teachers around me, no wisdom keepers, and I just didn't have an idea that I had a soul. And it took my soul quite a big push to get through to me. And it took a bit of a dark night of the soul where I kind of lost a lot of things that I loved, like my nan, who I was very close to. A 12-year relationship broke down, and I started to get bullied at work, and I was acting out and out of control, and everything seemed to be shifting and changing. And I had this moment where I sat at my desk and I was just working away, and I literally felt the light in me up and leave my body and take a running jump out of the window. And my soul had given up on my life. And I didn't know I had a soul, but I just knew that it had left my body because I'd felt that shift. And after that moment, I thought, oh my God, I've just lost my soul and I don't even know what it is. And I went for a little search on how to find some substance, some essence, some feeling of wanting to be here in my body. And what happened was I had a bit of a nervous breakdown. And then out of that came me going, okay, if I've got nothing to lose and my soul doesn't even want to be here, then what is the one thing that I can do to try and make myself happy again? And when you hit a rock bottom in your life, you often get a little bit of bravery to do the things that you really want to do. And that's the soul talking, that's the soul whispering. And so I decided to be an actress because it was like my lifelong dream. And I was so afraid of it at the time. And I thought, well, I've got nothing left to lose. My soul's left. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's try and live my dream. And I kind of want to remind everybody that your dream, your soul speaks very loudly when you're young, when you're a child, when you're very innocent and full of your own light. Usually, if you haven't had a really troubled childhood, you're usually full of quite a lot of light. And that means you usually do know what your soul wants you to do, but it gets dampened as we grow up. And so my soul light was speaking to me again, and I went on this journey to become an actor. I tried to be a normal actress, and it didn't really work out like that because my soul wanted me bigger, wanted me bigger. And I was in the rehearsal room auditioning as an actress, and I was doing this exercise where you had to paint your name with your fingers. And they said, just imagine you can paint your name. Now, I thought this was a stupid exercise because in my head, I was like, I want to be an actress. How is this going to help? Now, I know now that this is a form of light language, which I use as a healer. But back then, I didn't have a clue, and I just thought it was a silly exercise. But finally, I reached this flow state, and I want to just stamp point that, the flow state, because that is a really good way to find your soul when you're in flow. And I finally reached it. And what happened was a light appeared at the corner of the room. And in the middle of it was the spirit of my nan, so bright and so shiny. And I'd never seen spirit before. And she looked at me and radiated this pure love. And then I felt her place a hand on my back. And she whispered in my ear, don't be so afraid. And then I looked around and she was gone. And everybody was in the room still painting their name with their fingers. And that moment changed me because I realized I'd peeked beyond the veil and nothing was as I thought it was. But because it was so huge, I didn't know who to speak to about it. So I said nothing and I went back to the rehearsal room the next day. And the director pulled me out to audition and he said, don't be so afraid. And he placed his hand on my back. And I looked at him and I started to cry because I didn't know whether he knew the same thing as me. And he said, there's an older woman around you, light a candle for her when you get home. And then I auditioned, and for the first time I felt spirit coursing through my veins. And I was just so much more than myself in that moment. But actually that epic, beautiful moment of spirit actually led me to have a bit of a soul crisis because I didn't see the world the same as other people. I was now in the acting world and people weren't tapping in or hearing spirits in the room like I was, or seeing them or feeling them everywhere. So I felt quite alone. And that's why I always like to speak out about this story, because often when we're spiritual people, when we're soul-led, we can be in communities that understand soul and spirit and feel really welcomed and nurtured. But then what happens when we're in environments where people don't speak about soul and spirit? And it can be quite isolating and terrifying. And what do I do with all of this? And so that led me on to see a healer and get her to kind of help me work with my gifts and what was happening to me. And I trained in angelic Reiki, and then I did an eye to eye healing. And I just want to bring this exercise forward now because it's how I got to know my own soul story, and I didn't expect it. But I was asked to use my eye to look in my partner's eye, and we'd send this healing from one eye to the other in the infinity sign. And we just send this beautiful healing back and forth while looking in each other's eyes. And I believe this is why they say eyes are the windows to the soul, because you really can see beyond in an eye. And this is such an ancient magical practice. They actually did this in ancient Egypt. And some of the teachings got distorted because they used it as manipulation. But I believe we're in the time of bringing the practices back in the hands of healers and not the harmers. And so this practice was enlightening to me. And so I was sitting there looking at my partner in the eye, and suddenly I saw myself in a different lifetime hanging on the tree as a witch. And I heard in my ear, "You're a witch." And that's how I knew, okay, this is witch persecution, because I knew nothing about it at the time. I knew nothing about my soul. And back then, I probably didn't speak about past lives because it wasn't really on my radar. And that was the first moment that I got to know my own soul story, and it was speaking loud and clear. And I didn't really know what to do with it. And I recommend everybody else, if they haven't tried the eye healing, to have a moment later today or whenever you've got time and look yourself in the mirror and do that eye healing for yourself. Not to try and see whether you can see a past life or have any expectation, but to look into your eye and send yourself this light, this healing, and see if you can make a deeper connection with your soul. Because it's a beautiful practice and it's a free thing we can do every day. And it might take us away from looking at ourselves and sending messages of lack or self-doubt or hate. It's much more powerful to send healing love through the eyes, especially to yourself. Anyway, in my practice, I got my past life as a witch, and I'm a very curious type of soul. And I wanted to know why somebody would kill someone like me as a witch. And what ended up happening is, by magical means, I ended up getting a play from a play to first play to stage reading with the Actors Place I trained. And I developed my first play, Awaken, about this lifetime. And I discovered so much more about my soul and why witches were really killed, as far as I know, in my soul, which is a wiping out of the psychics and the mediums and the healers. And I had a big soul retrieval and healing just through writing my own story. And I hope through sharing that story in the next year or so, when it's going to be staged, that other people feel that they can speak about their soul story too on a bigger platform. But also that anybody can do this. You don't need to write a play, but actually sitting down and writing these stories that you receive. Sometimes I work with people through soul regression so we can go deeper. Starting to piece together your soul story by writing, by journaling, is a great way to get to know yourself on an even deeper level. And I'll go into that shortly, because I have made my own little journey of the soul for people to use to get to know themselves better. Because beyond that experience, I started to write more of my soul story and develop a trilogy. I've been to Atlantis, ancient Egypt. I've even been an alien that lost their soul, that all of these stories that I needed to speak about. Because what tends to happen is we're living in this life now, repeating those lives that were most important to us. So there was lessons and knowledge in our soul. And today your soul's going, wake up, because you're living it again. And it's an amazing way to break free of a karmic loop if you know your own soul story and what's important to you. But there is a way to track and understand your soul better. And I discovered this when I was mentoring other writers to develop their own spiritual stories. Because what happened is I launched my own company, 5D Theatre, to try and bring soul back to storytelling, because I found that spiritual characters, soulful folk, weren't really talked about in the mainstream. There was a lot of human stories, which is what I set out to share as an actress. But now I was a spiritual, soulful person. I wanted to understand the story of the soul, and I wanted to see spiritual, soul-led people having experiences and teaching me on what it's like to be an earth angel on the earth, or a soul person living their life that way, because it's complex and it's not always an easy ride. So I've got a little presentation I want to share with you that I put together. And it's called The Soul's Journey. And I've used it with many writers to help mentor their stories about how to get characters that are well fleshed out, that have a lot of soul life. But I also think it's so useful for spiritual people to go, where am I on my soul path? And to understand that you're not alone, and that we all go through some of these stages, if not all of them. And just to identify where you're at and what you might need to discover more at, or learn, or that there is light at the end of the darkness, because the soul goes in phases of dark and light and shadow and experience, and then joy, and back around again. So I'm just going to take you through the first stage, and you will get to experience one of these stages yourself when I guide a meditation later. But these are just some glimmers and nudges to help awaken you to what might have been your journey. And so I start with soul loss, which doesn't sound like a very cheery place to start, but I believe that this is what happens to a lot of us in life. It happened to me in my job when it wasn't working and my relationships were breaking down and I was getting bullied. And that experience of my soul jumping and leaving out of the window. But I believe this happens to a lot of us because we're born into a world that doesn't often nurture the soul, doesn't teach us. We don't often come into a beautiful shamanic community where everybody's talking about soul and how to nurture it. And I lived, and maybe you do, in a world where the knowledge of the soul is very small. And I grew up with the saying, you only live once. And my little child self felt that wasn't true. But that was the saying, and that was the myth that was being perpetuated. So I experienced soul loss in my lifetime because I was empty, unfulfilled, and didn't have any direction. And in case you're here at the start of your journey, or this is somewhere you've experienced, know that to get out of soul loss, you just need to dream again. You just need to feel into what you really want to do, because your soul is that glimmer, that essence, that hope. And by dreaming, you can start repairing what feels like a lost soul into soul remembrance. And soul remembrance, I've missed off the E there. Sorry, it's just missing on my screen. But this is a beautiful practice of remembering who you really are on a soul level. And let me assure you that when you remember your soul self, life just gets so much more bigger. And the whole way I live my life now is through my soul. And it makes me be able to do things I couldn't have even dreamed of before when I was disconnected. And that's how magnificent our souls are. And we can live that way all the time. And I often think it starts with you being able to be either sensual, joyful, or creative, whichever way is good for you. And that's how your soul steps in. And know that if you're only just on the journey of soul remembrance, then the time is now. It's the perfect time for you. And a great way is to start planting new seeds just by asking the question, what would my soul like me to do? And then just do the next thing. And when I first was asking the question, like, how could I feel better? I didn't jump from a job that I hated and a life that was miserable into an actor. I took a lot of baby steps. And my first step was going to a dance class because I loved to dance when I was young. And so I just go to dance class every Saturday and find a little bit of my soul back. So it doesn't have to be huge. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I didn't start off wanting to write a trilogy of plays, which I think is a good reminder because it's very easy to see the end result and want to jump there. And so I could not not speak about the dark night of the soul, which is a huge thing that many, if not all of us soul-led spiritual people go through. We go through a dark night, and this is often brought up by either death of a loved one, so heavy grief. Sometimes it can be severe low self-esteem. It certainly happened that way for me. It can be depression, illness, or a huge life change that you didn't feel in control of or didn't feel at the time you wanted. And it puts you into the dark night. And I call this stage the soul's shadow, because it's often the first time our own shadow comes to the surface. Maybe we haven't done healing work before, maybe we haven't been as conscious. And for the first time, we realize that we have all this stuff and possibly we don't know what to do with it. And for me, because I wasn't completely soul-led back then, I just partied harder and tried to numb it. I don't want to see this shadow. I don't want to see it. And that pushed me into crisis point. And I believe if we knew more about the dark night of the soul and that journey, that we wouldn't have to do those things and we wouldn't fall into addiction or toxic patterns. And one day we would have, and this is why it's my joy to be here today, a school that speaks about souls so that people can get nurtured through these stages. But what I do know about the dark night is it can be very isolating. So I just want to say it's very lonely in the dark night, but many of us have had it and you're not ever alone. But it is a huge initiation to lead you on to the light at the end of the tunnel. And there's always light because you're always a soul. So the light's always there, even if you don't feel you can see it at the time. And what happens once you go through the other side of the dark night, and it took me about 5 years to get out of my dark night of the soul, to be honest. It was a long process. But the light kept spilling in over those 5 years, and it felt like glimmers and nudges and whispers and little taps that everything was going to be okay. And I started to live a more magnetic life, which meant that synchronicity started to flow in much more easier. There was a sense of peace. And I got a massive inspiration because I started to be creative, started to be a storyteller, and I started to open up this wealth of who I was. And the most important thing to say is if you're coming out of that is to be you, and that might look like you're being a spiritual misfit because there's only one soul that you are. And so it might not be what you thought it was, and you might not even know where you fit. I know for me, I was going to a lot of healing circles and I was training a lot as a healer, but I was a spiritual storyteller. So I didn't quite fit into those groups because every time I came away from them, I'd be writing stories and going, but I just want to write this stuff down. I want to perform it. And so I was a bit of a spiritual misfit. So I want to bring awareness into that you don't have to find that you fit easily in groups, because sometimes you don't, because your soul's bigger. And what can often happen once you're on the path, you're speaking to your soul, is the want to go backwards and go soul blind. And this has happened to me quite a few times where I've gone, oh, I'm just going to be a normal actress. And I was just like, let's just go the industry route. No, let's look, no, the spiritual stuff, the soulful stuff I do over there in my circles, but I'm a closet person. And then I'm going to write a play. But instead, I'll write a play about my witch persecution, but I'll pretend it's a character. And my soul was like, really? You're going to keep selling me down the river like this? And so this is the stage I call soul blind, when you're kind of not really acknowledging everything your soul wants you to do. You're kind of dipping your toe in. And often this can look like putting the power outside of yourself. Sometimes when you're learning spirituality, it can be putting the power into guides more than your own self. Or it can be listening to others, and then your soul's like, that's not true. That's not true. But somehow you're getting led by others rather than your soul. And your soul doesn't really like this. And so it keeps pushing you to become soul aware. And what usually happens is that when you develop your psychic or your multidimensional skills or your intuition, you realize that what your soul says is more important than anybody else. And that's why it's so important to find this stage, usually when you're further along and you're having your soul awakening, to hone those gifts that you have. And that can be through many practices. It can be through meditation. It can be through movement. It can be through walking through nature. It can be through doing work with healers, doing different trainings. But it's really important that you develop your practice because it will be unique to you and it will help you tap in with your own soul. And your soul's knowledge is really, really precious. Because your soul can get fragmented. So often when you've done some shamanic training or you've worked in the healing realms, or perhaps this is an interest to you, you learn about soul retrieval and soul fragmentation. And this is often caused when we've been through trauma and the world is laden with trauma. It can be through psychic attack if you work in the astral realms and understand beyond this veil. It can also be through negative thought forms and any form of mind control. But it also comes through from past life pain, where your soul has been fragmented. Because if you take a small example, witches weren't killed well. Unfortunately, heretics and spiritual folk weren't killed well. And this means many of us spiritual people have this past life pain and trauma. And this is where the soul fragments and doesn't feel safe. And often why we don't feel safe to be soulful in this life today, because we know what happens to us when we live from the soul. But this stage is about acknowledging where your soul might have fragmented, because soul retrieval work is always available. And there's nothing better than being full and full of your own soul. And it took me writing a whole play to retrieve my soul. But that was just a beautiful journey of getting to know me, but also getting justice for the person that was killed. So there's other shorter practices. But the best way to get back into your soul is to have a soul activation. And an easy way to do this is to keep connecting with your higher self. Keep connecting with that higher self. And the higher self will feel like a really secure, loving best friend. And it will feel very similar to your energy. So you'll feel at home with that energy. If you think about it, we're taught so often to go and find a soulmate, but your soulmate's right here. It's you. You are your own soulmate. So it's like that home, safe energy to keep connecting with. And then you can start to activate your truth. And for me, I started to channel more because I was safe in my soul's knowledge. So I could connect with other beings, other knowledge. But you can also gather a soul tribe towards you and experience soulmates, twin rays, all of that, because your soul is being activated. But here's a big, deep one that I just want to dive into as well. And that's the soul crisis, which is often not that acknowledged or talked about, but it's big. It's big. You may have heard of the word spiritual crisis before, but this comes in, and I often find when you're further along in your path, you need to acknowledge this or make sense of this, but it can happen to some people very early. And it goes into the realms of some people thinking they're mentally ill, and it can be part of a Kundalini awakening, which is very sudden. But it can also be when you start to see the world differently, and it can shatter the soul a little bit. Maybe you had faith and trust in a spiritual teaching and you don't believe in it anymore. Or maybe there's something that's come through from your soul and it's scared you because it's made you wake up and see the world differently. And I wanted to name that it also can be through ancient abuse. I know I had a lot of soul crisis when things were going on in the world in the last few years, because I was getting triggered from lifetimes in Atlantis when there was a big fall. And there was things that were happening again that I was going, oh my God, on a soul level, my soul's going into crisis mode. And this is why the healing work is everything to me, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm writing spiritual stories, whether I'm teaching about anything, there's always healing work involved because, it's not always an easy ride connecting with your soul. But you do go from soul crisis to soul empowerment the more that you really feel in and go through those phases of crisis. And what comes out the other side of being shaken awake to a new way of seeing the world is this new perspective and an up level of a new energetic, magnetic expansion on how you feel about life. And you will stand firm in your own soul's beliefs. And there is nothing more empowering than standing in your soul's truth and honoring it. I think back to the time that somebody asked me in one of my first rehearsals, what gave me the right to speak about witch history. And I said, I was killed as a witch and I came back to tell the tale. That gives me the right. And that moment I stepped into my own soul's truth was like a tingling for me. It was like, I can just be me and own it. And it was beautiful. And usually at this stage, when you're in your soul empowerment, you can activate others and start spreading the soul love and giving others courage to speak their soul truth. I call it the spiritual Me Too movement. And it's a beautiful phase. So yeah, that's quite far on the journey. And just as we round near the final stages, I just want to bring in soul control, which is stage 11. Now, soul control is such a deep subject, and it's something I've talked about a lot. And I do work with it a lot as a healer. But very briefly, there are societal forms that try to harm the soul. And for me, exposure to what those forms could be and looking right in the shadow of society. So it's looking beyond your own shadow into any system, any structure, any ways that are trying to harm the soul. And this is a form of soul control. And once we know our souls and we know that we've done our work and that we're doing our healing work, then we can start to see the control systems in place and start to disassociate and disconnect and work in the soul realm to gain full control of our own souls. Because soul abuse has been very hidden throughout the centuries. And I think it's very important that we take our souls back and our knowledge and our wisdom, which leads me into the final stage of soul wisdom. And this is the stage when you just know, and it's your inner wisdom, your soul is totally linked with you, and you're aligned with your purpose and your passion and your magic, and you're aligned with doing something for the greater good of all. And I was saying just before we came on that today feels like a really big shift for me in my lifetime's work. It's been building. I've been talking about souls. I've been writing theatre. I've been performing. I've been growing. I've been healing. And to bring back this soul's knowledge and this journey kind of felt like a little nod from my soul going, oh yeah, this was one of the things you were meant to do. So it's an absolute joy and a pleasure to share it. But also I know that the strongest thing to do rather than just speaking about something is to experience something. So I want to take you on a very short meditation to just give you a bit of a taster of your soul. And I'm just going to, invite you to come into yourself and just take a moment and close your eyes if you need to. Or if you want to stand and move your body, that is so welcome. Let's not forget about the light language that came through my hands. So if you prefer to move, please do. Also, if you just want to lay down and have the spine straighten, absolutely. Just give yourself, we're going to give ourselves about 5 to 10 minutes just to go within and listen to your own soul speaking. And I want you to take a few deep breaths wherever you are. And just to come out of the head and all that thinking and that knowledge and those ideas and inspiration that's been shared. And come back into your body. And make a connection to where you feel your soul most strongly. And it might be in your heart. But it might be in your creative center, your sacral. It might be your third eye, around the mind. It might be anywhere that's linked in with your body. So just surprise yourself and go within and feel where there's a tug of connection and light. A tingle, maybe. A warmth. And now I want you to take that light outside of yourself. And we have an energy field all around our body, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And our soul, what I call the super soul, is around our body in our energetic field. And I want you to tap into an energetic space around your body and just make a connection with the light outside of yourself. And I also want you to check in, is this a part of my soul self that I want to connect with today? Just feel into whether you get a yes or no. And to make it simple, a yes will feel like a heart expansion in the body, and a no will feel like a sinking feeling. You might be quite clairaudient and you might hear it, but in case you don't, just trust your body to have the wisdom. But just asking again, is this a soul, super soul part of myself that I want to connect in with today? And just in case you get a no, I want you to just take your hands onto your body and just send healing to yourself, knowing that your soul might need some support and help. And so just use this time to bring love and reassurance to your body. But if you got a yes, know that you've connected in with your highest part of your soul self and follow that soul self where it needs to go. And ask it to take you to a really important moment on your soul's timeline. It might be in the past. It might be this lifetime, another lifetime. It might be a different dimension and reality. And it might be in the future, but just trust where your soul wants to go. And it's going to show you something, a word, a feeling, a symbol, an image of something you need to know. And I'm going to go quiet while you make this connection. And then I want you to ask your soul self, your super soul, why this is so important to you today. And sometimes we can try really hard to get answers or to make life make sense, and the soul doesn't really work like that. So I want you to let all expectation drop away and just sit in this stillness. And see what you're shown, told, or how you feel. And finally, this is a question for anyone, however deep their connection with their soul was, whatever they saw or didn't see, just to feel into. What would your soul like for you to do next? Is there a dream that's been hidden away in a little box, put in the shadows? And if there is, I'd like you to see yourself open that box and have a little look about what's inside and let it out if you can. And maybe today was a deeper connection with your soul, or maybe it's even the first time you've looked for a while. It's so easy to get led off to other things outside of ourselves and not come back to our own soul's wisdom. And it's like any relationship that needs nurturing, it needs connection, it needs listening, and it needs acknowledgement. So maybe your soul just came through today to say thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for acknowledging I exist. That's powerful. And in any way you like, you can make a little commitment to come back, revisit, reconnect, or simply listen. And with that connection restored, I want you to come back into your body. Maybe it's a little lighter. Does it feel a little bit different? Is your heart a little bit more full? And taking a few deep breaths and coming back round to the space. Just going to stop the share. Yeah, so that was a very short experience and teaching of the soul, which is, as I've mentioned, becoming a bit of my soul's work to share. And I hope you had a lovely experience. This is just the start of the soul journey for me. I will be sharing much more as I have a more in-depth experience to go through, which I will share with you now. Just can see some lovely hearts coming up on my screen.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. This was so beautiful. So, so beautiful. And I want to highlight a couple of things that you said that just really moved me. I had chills when you said that somebody asked, why are you sharing this, or why are you doing this? And you said, because I was burned as a witch and I'm back to share my story. And that sense of stepping into not just our own power in this lifetime, but the power of our soul is just, wow. It just really moved me. I haven't heard anyone explain it in the way that you've explained it here today. So thank you for that. It's been so powerful to experience. And giving, and then through doing that, giving others the power to speak their soul truth as well. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I just feel that like going out into the world in such a powerful way. So thank you for what you've shared here. It's so, so beautiful. And we have many beautiful comments. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful comments in the chat and a few questions, which we will come back to. We'll have a Q&A in a little bit here. And we are just really delighted to share that Cheryl is going to be offering an experience to go deeper into all of this over a 5-week time frame coming up here very soon. So I will share my screen now and we will tell you a little bit about that opportunity. And we really invite you all to come on in and have this amazing continued experience with all that Cheryl has shared about here today. And so this course that she's offering is called Placing Your Soul Center Stage, a 5D reality journey. And it will be starting on August 21st and going for 5 weeks. And so, Cheryl, I'm sure you have a lot you would like to say here. I'm just going to say a little bit of introductory information, and then I'll let you say a lot more. I just love this quote from Cheryl about what she does, right? And so this is sharing stories that have the capacity to open minds, awaken consciousness, and activate souls. And we've gotten such a beautiful sample of that today. So I think we're all feeling that here. And so I just love what you stand for, Cheryl, about this. It's time for a soul revolution and placing our soul center stage, letting that be the focus of how we allow our journey to be guided, because what could be more true for each of us, right, than just allowing our soul to lead. That reminds me of another thing you said, which was, it was something like, what your soul is asking you to do is more important than what anybody else might say. And yes, 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 that has been so true on my journey. And it's hard, it's tough, right? It's hard to do that, to put that into action, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
So would you, I'll let you jump in here. Do you want to say anything about this, kind of an overview of what people will receive in your course?
Yes, I would love to. And so I'm geeking out now because the child in me always wanted a soul school. I felt that that was an absolute loss at my school growing up. And I feel like we need it. We need to really understand what a soul is and what as is, and understand our own stories. It's so powerful. And it was only through my soul being a bit of a revolutionary spirit that got me to this. And I think if we don't live embodied with our soul, we end up playing a lot smaller than we mean to. And I really believe we are going to change the paradigm together. And so getting in touch with whatever our soul's here for. And Jocelyn, you just spoke into it, but it's sometimes uncomfortable when your soul's starting to tell you what you're really here to do, because you think just by being spiritual, it's enough. You think that just by, being a bit soul connected, it's enough. And sometimes your soul's like, no, 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 much more than that. And so I think sometimes we've got a level deeper to go. And I think that's why I wanted to bring this journey forward of going, okay, let's talk about it all. Let's really look at it. And there's a few practices that I'm wanting to bring into, I'm going to name it Soul School at the moment, just because it fills me with joy. But the practices of soul reading. So often our soul is speaking to us so often that we can read things and go, that's not true for me. But if we're not connected with the soul, we take other people's truths on. And so I'm bringing forward a lot of teachings about soul. There's been some amazing people, which I will be tapping into, both on the page that have talked about the soul, like Steiner, Edgar Cayce, Dolores Cannon, but also soul reading them, which is done two ways, where I'll channel their spirits, their souls, and speak to them directly about what they have to say, but also get you to listen in a soul reading way, which is like, oh, that might not be true for me. That might not be true. And I think that's so important, because the old paradigm teaches you to just take on knowledge and regurgitate it. And the soul doesn't want that at all. The soul's like, you're unique. You have this path. Let's get aligned. So not only will I be doing a bit of that and some channeling about what my soul's saying, which is always surprising, but I'll let it run the day because it's soul school, but also getting you really in touch with your own soul's journey, which we'll be doing week by week, which I'll go into a little bit more of that because we have the course outlined, don't we?
And
Yeah.
let's share these logistical details because this is so important for everybody to consider. So these will be live classes on Zoom. They'll be on Wednesdays, actually at the same time as we're meeting here for this gathering at 10 a.m. New York time. And classes will be approximately 90 minutes long. And here are the class dates: August 21st and 28th, and September 4th, 11th, and 18th. Okay, so and all classes will be recorded. So if there are some of them that you can't attend live, it's totally okay. You will get the recording within 48 hours after we record the live class. So don't worry about that. Okay, so back to you, Cheryl.
Lovely. Thank you. So module 1, yeah, we'll be going over why we've forgotten our soul, because we have been taught to forget. And a lot of the beautiful healers and, let me even nod into the witches that were trying to teach about this stuff were wiped out. So it's a big thing to address in history. And also that we're on a trajectory where there's still some that want us to forget our soul. For me, I see it in the transhumanist agenda, but there's a lot of different agendas that are trying to forget that we have souls. So it's important to discover why that is and to align with our soul star chakra, because I think a lot of us can align with our energy and our chakras and align with spirit. But unless we're anchored into our soul, everything gets a little bit out of alignment or a little bit confused because we always want to come back to us, which I mentioned before. And so I want to share practices of how to do that. And also, as I was saying about remote viewing, soul reading, I will be talking about Steiner and his views about soul to see what that inspires. And also channeling. I've been working with Steiner quite a bit lately. He seems to keep wanting to come in. He's feels very much about this movement. I mean, he did some amazing things, with his own past live theatre, which is probably why he's a bit of an akin spirit, but also the way he treats the earth and the world. And so we're going to explore the multi-dimensions of the soul. And then always make sure that we have your own soul activation as well, because as much as all of this, what I say, what other people say, what I can bring in through channeling, it's so important that you always experience what your soul says. And I'm going to keep bringing you back to that with deeper guided meditations. So that will be module 1, remembering. And module 2 will be discovering the journey of your soul. So I'm going to go deeper into what I did today about those 12 steps. I had to do a very quick whistle-stop tour, but I want to take you deeper into what those steps really mean, so that you can understand it and have your own thing to go to and to understand yourself and to help yourself when you are in those stages and what to do to come out of them. And also to nudge you into the easier stages by having practices. And we'll be touching into Edda Case's The Story of the Soul, because you've got to acknowledge what's gone before us. And then soul activism, which is a huge part of my work. I set out to activate souls, and I wasn't sure it was possible. And it's happened again and again and again. And it's such a beautiful process, because usually when you are able to be a soul activist, it means you really understand why you're here. And that means every space that you walk into, you're activating other souls because you're totally aligned. So we'll be going into that and how to find your own soul's wisdom and go deeper into a soul regression so that you can find a really key lifetime for you. Because that is usually, we are living in these loops of time. So there'll be something that your soul's going, you've been here before. There's so much knowledge in there for you. Think about how much you've learned in your lifetime now. You've got soul's knowledge to pick up on. So that's discovering the journey of your soul. And then, yes, the midpoint, the dark night of the soul. And this feels so important because there's often hardly any spaces and places that are held for this dark night. I have tried to teach about it a lot alongside my work, because when I was writing my play, I had PTSD from that soul life. What happened to me is it got, as I delved deeper into that life of trauma, I could actually feel the experience in my body. And then when I had to perform, it got really difficult to perform something that not that many people could understand. but I knew so well on a soul level. So I had to learn how to deal with soul trauma, which is often a different paradigm, and why soul retrieval is so important. And I know Dolores Cannon speaks about the past life pain, so I think it's important that we touch into that, but also how beautifully healing writing your own story can be. And you don't need to be a playwright like me. You don't need to be, I would advise you to be vocal about your own soul, because I think that's the times we're moving into. But if you have your own business, it's important to know your story, your why, on a 5D level, which is your soul's why. So I'm just going to get you in touch with that, and also do a beautiful soul retrieval from any pain that you're suffering from a past life or from a soul trauma, because it's important that you have the tools to pull that part back in a whole healed self, because then you can go up a level on your soul's journey. So that's a big week. Yeah, I say that and then I forgot about keeping your soul sovereign. So as a soul activist, this is so important to me. I moved on to shining a light on however magical abuse, I call it, can occur, and what happens on a soul level. There are ancient teachings about the Ba body in Egypt. There's many magical lineages that know about the soul, but also can take the soul and harm the soul if you use it for not for the light. And so I think it's really important to just know about this stuff so that we can actually keep our souls very safe and sovereign, because they're precious. They're precious in this life, but they're precious when we go through the death portal and resurrection. And that's a lot of the work that I've done. I've done it for my own family, keeping my dad's soul safe after he passed from this earth. It's a lot of work I do. I feel it's so important. I've been speaking about it a lot, and I know there's a lot of amazing death doulas out there and people that do this work, but I feel like we all need to come together and make this knowledge more available. And so I'll be doing a bit of that, and also working out where your soul is in an alignment with that, and keeping it sovereign in your own business practices or your way of being in the world. And I would touch on Madame Blavatsky's work, because she's done a lot around this realm, and it will really keep up your level of soul reading to what's true in that lineage for you. Did any of those teachings get taken down a dark path? And that's for you to decide. Your soul knows the truth better than anyone. And then we're on our final week, module 5, your soul's purpose for 5D Earth. And so that's really experiencing what the 5D Earth way of soul living would feel like, because we are energy magnets when we're working on a soul level. So it's really being embodied in that. And I want to take us through soulmates and twin ray souls and sacred union, because some of our soul awakening can happen through other people, through love relationships and activations. I know some of mine did. That's part of the work that I write about. I'm quite a romantic soul at its core, but also these things can throw us off course and send us further away from our soul as well. So I think that's important. But also to speak into what 5D soul tribe collaboration is, because this has been quite a solitary look at your soul, trust your soul. But then when we move out to the 5D earth, we're talking about souls gathering, because we're all inevitably one big super soul, monadic oversoul. So this one's coming back into more community and connection and what that could be. And I will finish that with a soul story guided meditation to send you away with where you're going next on your journey, which is going to be epic, because the 5D realm is epic. So it's a beautiful way, to end. And I kind of want to read that last quote. As soul-led warriors, leaders, and creators, we will shift the paradigm together towards the 5D way of living that our souls came here for. Yeah, to that.
Aho.
Yes.
Wow, what a beautiful class you are presenting for us, Cheryl. Thank you so much for bringing all this forward. And I just, wow, I feel the depth of it as you're walking us through every step, all the depths that we'll be exploring here, and all the profound beauty of this journey. So yeah, this is very exciting. So for everybody who is feeling the call and would like to join Cheryl and all of us here, we are truly delighted to offer this program on a donation basis. And this is one of our foundational tenets of the Global School for Quantum Evolution, that we want this course and all of our courses to be accessible to as many people as possible all around the world. Now, we have spoken to Cheryl about, what is the true value here? What is the true full value of this course? And that value is $777. But we want to make this available to you at the amount that feels right to your soul and to your heart at this moment in time, and without any financial restrictions or limitations. So if you would like to join us, and I'll put the link in the chat again in just a moment, you would simply come here and click on this button and send in the donation that feels right for you at this time. And we are just delighted to welcome you in. And Cheryl, I can't wait for you to share all of this with everybody who is feeling the call. What else would you like to say about your course, just, to sum everything up, or a closing statement about your course, Cheryl?
Yeah. So what's coming through now from my soul, who's nudging me on the shoulder, going, this is that the reason I brought through this course, and it's just literally come into culminations because I've been teaching parts of it, and I've only ever taught half of that soul's journey before, never the full 12 stages. And what's coming in is the why now is because of my own spiritual path, that I got thrown off path so frequently. And I just wished I had some way of guiding my way back to my soul. I spent a long time trusting people outside of myself, and that always let me down in some way. And so this offering is for you to build a really good relationship with yourself, because I think we really need that, because we are in really chaotic times. And while we need to hold a light for the world that we're moving into, we have to acknowledge the world that we're in as well. And so really, I wanted this to come through right now. So we had a little map to come back to, and we had a way of honoring ourselves above all others. But we also, most importantly, came back to do what we needed to do today, because that's how true justice is served on a karmic level. And so there was nothing more beautiful to that witch that was persecuted than me going, I've told your story. I've kept you alive, and I've pulled back your soul. And so whatever misjustice might have happened on your timeline, it's a way to honor it, retrieve it, and give it sacredness that your soul deserves, because it's not just this lifetime that matters, it's all the lifetimes that you've lived and all the lifetimes that you'll go on forward to live, if we can all get aligned with this soulful way of living. So it feels so important and powerful, and I actually feel blessed that I actually did listen to my soul finally and brought this through, because there was a long time I wasn't listening. So I say all the stages and the sharings with a humbleness of having to walk the untrodden path alone for a lot of it. So I hope that other people don't have to.
Yes, so amazing. So amazing. And it's so true that this can be this journey of our awakening and coming back into connection with our soul can be so lonely when the other people around us don't understand, or can't support us, or can't hold space. And so what a beautiful community you will be creating here and bringing together, that of people who are like-hearted, like-minded, and really ready to learn about this and ready to share in your class their experiences too. So this is just so deeply needed and so beautiful. So can't say thank you enough for bringing it forward.
Yay, my pleasure. I just caught, did we want to do any questions anyone had? I just caught someone asking about the replay, which there is.
Definitely. Yes. So I think, Dale is asking, is there a replay? I missed the program. And I think Dale, you're probably talking about today. And yes, there will be a replay. We'll send it out. immediately after this. And you can actually go anytime to the Sacred Planet YouTube channel and catch the replay immediately because it's already been live streamed and recorded there. But if you want to wait for the email for the replay, you can do that too. We'll send it out a bit later today. Now, somebody else was asking about replays for the course modules. Let's see. Tracy says, I will be away at a training for 2 of those weeks. Is it okay to catch up on the replays? And yes, absolutely, Tracy. We will record all of the sessions. So if you can attend 3 live and watch 2 by replay, that's perfect. That's wonderful. Totally fine. So yeah, let's see what other questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Let's see. Kat says, I've been writing my own soul's journey for about 2 months now. That's amazing, Kat. I also am adding the synchronicities which took me to important people and events. This would be my higher soul directing my life. Yeah. Beautiful. If you want to say anything about any of these, jump in at any point.
Yes, I love that. I love that people are writing. I've actually been connecting with quite a few writers who are writing their soul story, and you know, the 12 stages is also a good paradigm to write around it. But it absolutely fills me with joy to hear about anybody else that's doing it and honoring it, because it just feels like Spirit gave me a nudge and said, you know, this is one of the changes that you're going to see happening. And I'm like, oh, now I can see it happening. So I don't think we understand the full ripple effect of us writing those down and sharing them and how that's going to change. But I only see it as in, you know, I love theatre, but I'm often going to see stuff and I'm like, you're keeping people stuck because you're not showing them a new multidimensional reality of how things could be. And so you imagine if all these stories are shared and all these ways of being passed down, you know, that's going to absolutely change the whole paradigm. So I just want to say hooray for everybody that's doing it in any way.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So one person here asked, thank you, Cheryl. Can you be more clear about the infinity symbol? And so when you were talking about the infinity symbol in the eyes, and this person says, I have heard of this from the heart to the other's heart. Is it just the same, but with the eyes?
Yes, good question. So it is the infinity, the number 8. And yes, I know they do it a lot during the heart, but it's a really powerful practice to do, eye to eye. So it's just imagining that energy going in a square of 8 back and forth, which is the infinity sign. So yeah, I think the important thing to remember is to not worry too much about the technicalities, and it's more about the energy that you're sending as well. Because what it does for you is to drop away your consciousness and concentrate on the eye, but also let yourself go a bit deeper. So concentrating on that 8th, or even sending that energy, would stop you thinking about, you know, what have I got for dinner? Where am I? Is this going to work? And get deeper into the soul. So yeah, it's a good to concentrate on the 8, but you can also just concentrate on the energy that you're sending.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Let's see. Claudia says, I'm having a concussion. Oh, I'm sorry that you're going through that, Claudia, which limits me to being on the computer for only a maximum of 60 minutes. How long do the online sessions usually take? And so, yeah, what would you recommend in that case, Cheryl? Because I think we had said about 90 minutes each, right?
Yeah. And so, oh, wow. Yes. So always honor your body and what you need. So they're 90 minutes, but I often, because I'm neurodivergent, I work quite differently. So I can't be on screen for too long, which is why I do meditations and I will come off and close my eyes myself. I also always invite anybody that works with me is to come away from the screen and just listen with their eyes closed in meditation and take it like a transmission. I also invite you to move your body and not necessarily stay still. I don't believe in being stuck here, still to screens. So I invite everything whilst it's live so that you can feel like you're part of the energy, that you don't even need to be in front of your screen. You can be in a different space, just listening, receiving. It's the energy connection that is the most important. But also, if you need it for you, to break down the recordings and go, I will listen to it a bit on the replay, I will listen to it a bit. make it work for your life, because what I would never want us to do is the old paradigm, which is try and stay still, concentrate, and stay stuck. I'm wanting people to feel into their body and feel into their own wisdom and have their own awakening. So I think it's about being very free about how you want to receive it and where you want to be and how engaged, because you can be engaged in the soul and not necessarily staring at someone on a screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's such a great idea, to not even make yourself look at the screen the whole time, just to listen, like even turn the computer away from you, because there is an energy, right, coming from the computer, right? So even turn it away from you, distance yourself from it and listen in. I think these are really important self-care practices for all of us.
Yeah.
I know I spend a lot of time on Zoom, and when I'm off, I really need to be off, and like with my feet barefoot on the ground outside helps a lot. There's a lot of different things we can do to help manage that. So yeah, hope that you are feeling better very soon and that your concussion heals up very quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's big.
Yes. So Tal is asking, how long will the sessions be available for us to review and process after the end of the classes? So Tal, we're not taking them down at any point in time. They'll be available for years and years. It's not like we're taking them down in 6 months or we're taking them down in 12 months or anything like that. So we really want you to have plenty of time to come back and revisit them as many times as you want. Maybe you do it again next year, and come back to it in a new way. That is very welcome, and we have no specific plans to take them down. So, let's see. Yeah, any other questions? Also, if you're watching live on YouTube, feel free to put a question in the live chat. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, go ahead and tell us what you think in the comments. What do you think of what Cheryl has presented today? What do you think of the upcoming course? Are you going to be joining us? And if you have any questions about it after we're done this recording and you're watching it later on YouTube, please put your questions in the comments there on YouTube, and we will be addressing those and getting back to you. Yeah, is there anything else that you want to say, Cheryl, before we close for today? I don't see any more questions for now, but I'll bring them up if we get any. But is there anything else you would like to say in closing?
Yeah, I think just to respond on that last point about, how long they'll be available and when to come back to, because often for me, it's been bringing that soul's journey and the soul learnings over a long period of time. And often we can, go through something unexpectedly when we're not expecting it. So it's a little bit of a holding space to go through. I mean, I expect it to be quite activating. Anything I'm walking through on a course wise has quite a big activism part. So there is great change that happens, but they're also to know to come back to, and even this recording today, just to give your soul a bit of nourishment, and that your soul's got your back, and there is, it doesn't have to be so isolating. And just to remember that whatever you take away from today, and obviously I'd love to share space with the souls that need to be there, but to take away that you're not alone on this soul's journey, and that, your soul's there, but so's, everybody is with this big collective going through this awakening. So it doesn't have to be so isolating, even when it feels it does. And the other side is so beautiful and so nourishing. And I would not live my life any way differently now from what I've been through. It's so important to be side by side with your soul.
Yes. Thank you, Cheryl. Absolutely. And yeah, we know those of you who your souls are ready, you'll feel the call, right? You will know if this is right for you. And we're so excited to welcome you on in to receive all that Cheryl has to offer here in this course. We do have one more question here that I will reply to. So Branwyn is asking, what time of day will the course be live? So it'll be actually the same time of day as we're doing this live webinar. It'll be on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. New York time. So that'll be 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. New York, 3 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in CET, Central European time. So that's the timing, and the classes will be about 90 minutes long each. and they will all be recorded. So if you ever can't attend live, don't worry, you can catch up on the replay. Thank you for that question, Branwyn. And thank you all for your beautiful comments here. We have Joni says, Cheryl, you shine. I agree. That's so beautiful. Many beautiful wishes for you here in the chat, Cheryl. So thank you all for your beautiful comments. Aza says, I was late, so I may have missed this, but oh, here's a good question before we close. How exactly do you define the soul?
Oh, that's the big question of the
question.
yeah, that's the whole question of the course. So for me, the soul is defined differently, which is why I was using words like super soul or monadic soul. And it is one of the things that I'll be going into more, because let's say from our higher self or our super soul, this part of us can never be harmed. But I've also talked about soul fragmentation. So there's parts of our souls that can. So I don't have one definition for the soul. And that's what I wanted to go into and explain, and also teach into, because if you're only connecting to the higher part of your soul, how could you do a soul retrieval? Because it's never been harmed from that space. So it's really about going through those multi dimensions, and people teach it differently. But for mine, it's like there's a sort of a soul that's closer to us and that can be harmed, that can be fragmented. And then there's this like super soul that is what I usually name higher self, that's totally linked with spirit. And so it's always fine, and you always need to get your connection from there. And then there's this monadic oversoul, that's like your part of God, Goddess, the divine, all that is. So it's 3 stages to me, but I think most people do describe it differently. And so I wanted to talk into that on this course, because I think it's very important that you find it for you as well, and not just take it from me or take it from anyone else that's been out there, because it's your soul and your connection, which is unique. But for me, that is how I sort of very simplistically stagger it.
Okay. Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. And I'm sure you'll share a lot more in depth about that in the class for those who are called to join. So that's wonderful.
It's a really good question. It comes up a lot, actually, which is another reason why I was like, we need to really talk about the soul, because it's a word we use so frequently. But what do we mean by it? So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
There's one more related question if you're willing and able to answer one more here.
Absolutely.
So Catherine asks, how is the soul related to spirit?
Yes. So inevitably, our soul is our most spiritual part of us. So for me, our soul is that journey back to spirit. So really, I just see them as this like beautiful soul link, which feels like a big wire or light or cord or however you see it, going back to the highest source, divine. And so we are part of that. But for me, a soul is an emanation of it, like a fractal of it or a fragment of it. So it's not quite the spirit. So in some ways, that monadic highest point of the soul is the spiritual aspect that I'm talking about. And the soul's, I don't want to say dropped consciousness of it, but it has dropped to a place where it can be harmed and can be accessible in this sort of lower realm. So to me, we all are part of this spiritual matter, but our soul is like a lower version of frequency that's more closer to us, no matter how far we get down. So
And the spirit then being closer to source, or being the spirit being source.
The spirit to me is source, because we all are that. So in some ways, if you really look deep within yourself, or you really understand the realms, we're never harmed. Everything is always fine. Everything is always spirit. So that's always there. But for me, the soul is about how to navigate this reality that we're in, because it's a different reality to that completion fact of going back to source. And we're here to do something more than that. And so that's why I feel it's important to connect in with our soul, because it has a path for us, a program for us to exist in this reality. If we just wanted to be pure spiritual matter, which is just a beautiful space to be, we wouldn't be here. And so I love spirit, constantly connecting with spirit too. but our soul's a bit of a different realm we're playing in that's sort of closer to us in this reality.
Yeah, that's beautifully expressed. Thank you for that clarity. Wow. Well, thank you everybody for joining us here. Thank you for those who've been on live. Thank you for those who are watching this later as a recording. Do comment on the video and let us know, how do you feel now? What are your thoughts? Have you enjoyed what Cheryl has presented here today? We would love to hear from you. And as I mentioned, if you're watching this later, do put any questions you have about the course or about what Cheryl presented in the comments below the YouTube video, and we will get back to you. And wow, thank you so much, Cheryl. Once again, this has been just a really profound experience to be with you and to receive all of this today. Thank you. And I'm really looking forward to your course. And I know so many out there are. So welcome in everybody who's feeling called. Go ahead and register by donation. We're delighted to welcome you in. And yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl, for all that you have given to us today.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. I love talking souls. It's like a dream come true for me. Thank you.
So beautiful. And thank you, Kathleen, for being on with us today, and see you again soon, everybody. Bye.